And welcome everyone. We are here for our second day of the EQ for CNU, Emotional Intelligence for EQ in Higher Education. And today we have a panel about a really awesome case study at an institution that's doing incredible work in education. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about this experiment that I've gotten to be a little bit of a part of. My name is Joshua Friedman. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of 6 Seconds, the Emotional Intelligence Network. We're a global community working to increase the world's emotional intelligence, and we work in every sector and space. We have certified practitioners in 150 plus countries and territories. And one of the places where we see a tremendous need for emotional intelligence is in higher education, as a place where not only for the students, as students and the faculty and staff and administrators and community members who are part of the institutions every day, but as a ripple effect and a way that as building these skills, as people in higher education, they're able to integrate emotional intelligence into their professional lives. So I'm delighted that you're here today at the conference, and thank you for joining or watching or being part of it in some digital way. And we'd love to have your comments and sharing and questions and chat, participate and be active in this. And then throughout the day, we have lots of workshops that are interactive and places for you to join and learn and participate and engage and practice and share. Today's panel, we've got the team from the Wolfson campus of Miami-Dade College sharing this ongoing case study, looking at something very unusual, which is in the past when we've worked on emotional intelligence in higher education, it's almost always been with one group, students or faculty or administrators, and you're all gonna be in for a treat. I'm gonna turn it over now to the panelists. Beatriz Gonzalez, Dr. Beatriz Gonzalez, why don't you get us started?
Sure. Thank you so much, Josh. As you said, these are really critical skills for work, but also in our personal lives. Being smart with feelings is really essential. And we're really grateful that we have the opportunity to share with you what we've embarked on here at the Wolfson campus of Miami-Dade College. And hopefully it's helpful to you if you're thinking of doing something widespread at your campus. As Josh said, I'm Beatriz Gonzalez, president of the Wolfson campus. The Wolfson campus is one of 8 campuses of Miami-Dade College. The college overall has about 120,000 students. 2/3 of those students are in degree-seeking programs. At Wolfson campus, we have about 10,000 degree-seeking students. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Sarah Tusky for her to introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone from sunny Miami. I know we have different time zones. It is 11 a.m. here. My name is Sarah Tusky, and I'm the Dean of Faculty here at the Wolfson campus. So I oversee our academic affairs. And I've got some fabulous colleagues joining me on the panel. So I will turn it over to Wen.
Hi, good morning. I am the Opening Gateways Title V Grant Director for our Wolfson campus. And Marianne, or Tyra, sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Madison.
Good morning, my name is Tyra Madison, and I am the Academic Grant Manager for the Title V Opening the Gateways for Mathematics Success and Emotional Intelligence grant here at the Wolfson campus. Marianne.
And I'm Marianne Maduro. I'm the program manager of the Teaching and Learning Center here at the Wolfson campus, which is it's a program of the Opening Gateways grant.
So this is our wonderful team that's here for our conversation today and doing so much of the leadership for our emotional intelligence development work, and very grateful to work with these ladies, and not just grateful, but happy because it's a wonderful team. So I'm going to get us started by doing sort of an overarching view to talk about why the campus embarked on this journey and some global takeaways so far as we've been at work at this. What are some things to keep in mind? What are lessons learned and things that we're just keeping in the forefront? So why did we do this? I would say there are 3 reasons. The first have to do with context-specific reasons. So when I arrived here 3 years ago to begin this position, It was July of 2019. And when I spoke to my boss about, all right, well, what should be on day one? First meeting I had, what are the main things that should be on my radar? That person told me two things. One was about online education and the direction that the college was headed at that time. And the second was about the morale at the campus. And I thought that was very significant that out of all the things the person could tell me to be on my radar, one of those two things was morale. And I was very happy to learn that, since I don't know what baseline is, to know that, hey, there was something going on and it needed attention. And if, we know about things having to do with morale, it's not the easy answer of money. Not to say that people might not go somewhere else for more money, but that's not really why people stay at a job or are excited about a job. It's three other things. It's purpose, autonomy, and trust. And so that, particularly the autonomy and trust part, has a lot to do with the relationships at work, particularly with your supervisor. Secondly, with regard to context, and you're going to be able to relate to most of this, I think, most people will, it had to do with the challenges and uncertainty of the last year and a half. When I started in July of 19, that fall, when we began classes, we had Hurricane Dorian. So the campus, the college, began that year with the stress of a hurricane. For us, that means we go into an emergency mode, everything shuts down, things are pulled in. And thankfully, it wasn't a bad hurricane for us, a minor cleanup at the end, but it did shut us down. And so we started the academic year with that sort of stress. Then as the year unfolded, we know that the pandemic was upon us. We knew that by February, and by March, most of us had to go home. That later that year, George Floyd was murdered, and there were all sorts of other incidences that occurred that made the national news that we were all aware of. And it was also the national election that was very contentious. So it was quite a time in terms of everything that was going on, a very ambiguous time. And I think particularly in times of uncertainty, when there's ambiguity, certain things become very, very important. So self-awareness, empathy, consequential thinking. This could happen, but this could happen too. Are we prepared for all the possible outcomes? So it was just very important given the context of our time. Also, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The times were, we should always be paying attention, but the times would not let us not look at it, right? We have to pay attention. What can we do in our own spaces? And I believe that any kind of cultural intelligence first starts with emotional intelligence. You got to start with that work first. And we were embarking on DEI work at the campus. It was an important goal for us. And so that EQ foundation, again, very important to advance equity work, to advance a sense of inclusion at the campus. So those are the context reasons. In terms of other reasons, well, it's the nature of our work. This is people work, people learning. And if you're not in the teaching and learning classroom in that environment, you're supporting that. So there's all kinds of negotiation, coordination, collaboration that has to happen for that to go well. And so given the nature of our work, these skills are essential. EQ skills are essential. And finally, I think it's the nature of leadership that leadership calls for us to have these kinds of skills, these people skills. A lot of times we put it on the back burner because something might be more urgent and easier to understand, like a spreadsheet or a list. Those things are something we can manipulate easily. And so we put this on the back burner, even though it's so highly important. And I would say now I've been around the block for a while now in higher education, and that means I've been able to work in different kinds of places: secular, religiously affiliated, private, public, open access, R1, community colleges, universities, East, West Coast. And it's not about that. It's really about the nature of leadership and really connecting with the people on the team, the people who are part of the organization, and knowing what they need, listening to their ideas, and again, infusing that autonomy, that trust, that sense of purpose that's really important to people. And so then what are some of the takeaways after working on this for, a good 3 years, and in the last year, really intensely with this model of leaders faculty, students, all at the same time. So I'm going to go to the three C's for this. So the first is commitment, that you really have to be committed to doing this. There has to be the leadership for it, and leadership in different layers and levels. So it has to be a priority, and everyone has to know it's a priority. So that message needs to be clear. Secondly, I think the work all the burners need to be on. So that's why we're talking to students, we're talking to faculty, we're talking to leaders, because it's like diversity work. It's such a complex situation. It's such a complex topic that you really need to get everything going to have some critical mass to start moving that needle. So prioritize, clear message about its priority, all the burners, and then putting in the resources. And some of the resources are monetary, and we're going to talk about a grant that helped us really scale this work. But we all have some money in our budgets, right? Martin Luther King said a budget is a moral document. So you fund what you believe in, that you think is right and good and is going to help you get to your goals. And so, maybe some money needs to be moved to do this training. And we did put money into the group training, into leader certification. But I'd say that there's other resources too, like time. Time is precious, and we're moving the organization to put time into this. And maybe other people don't think the time should be there, which gets me to the last resource, and that is political and social capital. To move this forward, because it's important and we think it's valuable to our people and to this organization, the Wilson campus, we're staying the course. And not everybody wants to stay the course. This is not comfortable or easy for everybody. And so we're spending capital on this because not everybody wants to be on board. If you know the 5 sources of power, 2 of the strongest sources of power are expert power, like you know what you're talking about and people can see it, but the other is referent power. Okay, you're a good egg, I like you, I'm going to trust you, and you get behind you. But that's a power then, that a resource that you're spending if it's unknown yet how it will be, right? And so this was kind of an unknown world for all of us to do this together, because it did involve talking with each other, being vulnerable with each other, with people you work with. So that kind of investment, real personal investment. So the second C is course correction. So there was a lot of feedback loops going on here all the time. Every time we had monthly sessions with a group we call the managers, the Wilson campus managers. And that's a group of about 70 people. And those folks, there's normally a monthly meeting, and it used to be sort of informational, but for the last 3 years, we've used that meeting for development, learning, for the group's learning. And that's how we used, in the last year, it's all been about emotional intelligence and team building. But every time we had a session, we'd meet with the facilitator and say, this thing didn't work as well, that worked a little better. We had curriculum from 6 seconds, but we modified it so that it fit better this manager's group. So there was lots of tweaking of the knobs to listen to people. And you will have naysayers who are like, I don't know about this. Here's an article that says absolutely the opposite of what you're trying to do. Read every article, answer back. That's engagement. I don't mind that at all. And if we can't have those kind of discussions in the academy, where can we have them? So as long as it's respectful and you're showing me, okay, and here's what I think about what you just offered. So that feedback, that flexibility to adjust. We also had coaches with our department chairs and our cabinet. Not all the matches were great. It didn't work out. It didn't click. And so we made adjustments with coaches, and people could change the coach. So that flexibility, that course correction, I think is really important. Not, yes, we're doing this no matter what, the way we intended first thought. No, adjust, listen to the people. And then finally, in terms of listening to people, compassion, patience with the process, patience with people. Also that it's not linear. Maybe we're moving in this direction and then, now I have beef at work on a work topic, and it kind of sets us back. So the progress, look at it as the overall package. And also in terms of compassion, space for others, because we're all learning, right? And maybe I knew you a certain way, but you're changing, you're evolving, but I'm not giving you room to be different in my mind. So that compassion, that as people are learning, we see them with new eyes, and we give them that space to be this evolving person. And then in the end, we celebrated. We had a lovely party after a year of learning, but sometimes it was a little tough for us, in getting through all these new learning spaces. So that's kind of a big overview. And now we're going to get specific about what happened with our different leaders, what happens with students, and what happens with faculty. And to get down there into these details, we're going to start off with Sarah Tusky.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our multi-prong approach. And as Dr. Gonzalez mentioned, it's also multi-layer. So we knew from the start that we wanted to look at emotional intelligence and develop the skill set with our students and faculty. It's really where we started. We pursued Title V funding. We'll talk a little bit more about exactly what we did and how we did it and the specific things. But the reason why we wanted to start with students and faculty, there's been a lot of research that shows, specifically for students, that higher emotional intelligence and engaging students in social and emotional learning early on can have some really positive impacts on not just their success in the classroom, but reverberating success throughout the duration of their program. And as an open access institution, that is something that we spend a lot of time and investment in just collectively, is how we can support our students to be successful through the completion of their program. We really have two types of programs. We have those students that are looking to transfer on to universities, but we also have a myriad of workforce programs. And so those can be anywhere from short-term college credit certificates to associate of science degrees. And those students are looking to step right directly into the workforce or upskill in some way. And so investing in EQ and our students, we saw a tremendous opportunity to help our students be more successful, which is really why we're all in education, right? Is to support and develop students. I think every single person that works in higher ed will say that they have a passion around it. And so it just made sense, right? Especially with the literature that supports this evidence that students tend to be more successful when we develop their social and emotional learning. We also knew we wanted to do it very early on. So we wanted to connect students with this type of learning in their first semester. And here at Miami-Dade College, we've designed all of our pathways in such a way where students typically, I would say overwhelming the majority, take a math course in their first semester. And so we saw a tremendous opportunity to look at developing mathematical skills and merging that with emotional intelligence. And I know Dr. Madison will talk more specifically about some of those interventions and initiatives that we developed, but we knew very early on that was something we wanted to focus on. We also are looking at incorporating social and emotional learning in our student life skills course. While that course is primarily geared towards first-time in college direct entry students, those students are students that transfer to other institutions, tend to transfer to other institutions. We saw that as an opportunity to not only support them here at MDC, but also give them a toolkit when they go off and transfer to another institution. The other group that I mentioned that we were really, that we had prioritized was around our faculty and staff. And there's emerging literature that talks about, faculty who have higher emotional intelligence, not only just better self-awareness and better self-management, but it promotes greater understanding of others and empathy, which you can imagine the correlation between better classroom management, better communication, and just at a fundamental level, an increased ability to connect with students. So all of these things improve the quality of teaching and learning. And so we wanted to do that through a teaching and learning center. And looking at AQ's pod network, we wanted to do faculty learning communities, EI workshops, and then Dr. Gonzalez talked a little bit about how one of the priorities was around online education, Quality Matters certification for our courses that we offer online and also in a blended format, which means partially synchronous and partially asynchronous. And so those were kind of the big buckets. We knew faculty and students were high priority, and we were pursuing Title V, so Department of Education funding around that. So then COVID hits. And I think this is one of the perfect examples around some of that course correction. So we've been doing a lot of development with our managers. We prioritize professional development. And as Dr. Gonzalez mentioned, we had our managers meetings structured in such a way where we were infusing learning. But one of the things that we saw in COVID, and I think we all saw this in our work lives, was things became very ambiguous, right? Both in our personal lives, but especially in higher education. We were asked to completely transform our way of work. And our managers were having to not only engage teams of people, but also collaborate in ways that they'd never done that before. And the literature, I mean, there's streams of literature in management around how higher emotional intelligence and the development of emotional intelligence reduces employee turnover, helps you identify transformational leaders, improves organizational culture, which was another one of those buckets, right? And stimulating creativity. And during COVID, we know we needed that in so many different ways. But also enhancing employee acceptance of radical change. And I don't think there's anything that I could point to in the recent term around radical change as what COVID has done to higher education and the disruption that's occurred. And so, in addition to students, faculty, we now created this specific development plan for EQ and our management, so administrators. And here at MDC, our administrators encompass and lots of different levels, but also our department chairs. So I know at some institutions, they may be partially faculty, partially administrators, but here at MDC, they're full administrators. So we created this structured learning and infusing EQ all around that. And so as Dr. Gonzalez mentioned, we had our monthly meetings. So all campus managers participated in those meetings where it was really developmenting fundamental aspects of emotional intelligence. But then we also wanted to take it a step further. And so we established a group, which we affectionately call it Casa, which is Wilson Campus Academic and Student Affairs, so Casa. And those are the managers from our Student Affairs and Academic Affairs, so our department chairs and other leads, other managers in the academic arena that come together once a month to really kind of unpack issues and find ways to collaborate, because at the end of the day, collaboration between those two areas is critical. And then we did an even deeper dive for our academic affairs leadership, so our department chairs, our grant directors, and our learning resources, so our library resources leadership, as well as our cabinet members. And that allowed them to give individually, so they've experienced this learning, right, throughout, and a better understanding of themselves. But what we did with those two groups was a very deep dive in helping individuals to understand themselves and the aspects of emotional intelligence and areas where they may want to focus or not focus. And so I think one of the biggest takeaways for me, and Dr. Gonzalez, you mentioned this, was course correcting, right? So it doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go, right? You may have this really great laid out plan, but you have to prepare space to evolve, develop, and be creative, but also meeting people where they are. Overseeing academic affairs, there are so many brilliant people that I work with, and they all have some of them have extremely strong opinions. And so in terms of individuals really embracing this, as well as some individuals that just really didn't see the value, and creating space for that dialogue and getting people to identify and connect and engage in a way that works for them was really, really important. Another key aspect of this was collaboration and investment. So investment of resources, investment of time. And I know I mentioned earlier that we had we were pursuing grant funding. We were very fortunate to get that. And Wen is our project director who is overseeing our Title V funding that is really helped us accelerate and really just kind of expand this work tremendously. And so Wen, if you want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the project objectives as it relates to the grant.
Yes, we were lucky enough to receive the Title V grant from the Department of Education. As we said before, the title was Opening Gateways to Emotional Math Success and Emotional Intelligence. And we have two major outcomes that we wrote in. First being the first outcome, improving math outcomes of direct entry students through supported math acceleration. And then the second outcome was more of engaging the faculty and staff in educational development at the Wilson campus. With each of those big outcomes, all the outcomes are to increase retention persistence rates, to increase success rates of our students. And in the outcome one, where Dr. Madison is going to go over more details of the program, it was to create like a summer bridge program that included financial literacy forums, social emotional learning forums, peer mentoring, which we called our Wolfpack mentoring program, the accelerated math program, and the infusion of EQ into our student life skills courses, with the development of the Math Academy, which is like a 1 week math review session for students, and infused with like a peer-led team learning component so that they are ready to connect with each other and work with each other from the beginning. As for engaging faculty, that component was to create a hub for faculty collaborations, faculty and staff learning communities, EQ workshops, and also quality matter certification. And in this particular grant, we were writing it so that faculty and staff, whatever development or experience that they've gotten from our program, that was a feedback into, it was integrated into our teaching and learning center programming in the future, so that they can have that continuous loop of expanding that knowledge of EQ to everybody that have used it. As Dr. Tusky had mentioned before, in the Forbes 2020 article, it was one of the top 10 skills that's needed by employees, 6th ahead of decision-making, negotiation, and cognitive flexibility. And researchers have found that EQ accounts for 58% of job performers across all sectors of employment. So, we were ahead of the game in writing this particular grant, and lucky enough to receive the funding from the Department of Education to support our endeavors. So Dr. Madison is going to tell you more about the development of our Summer Bridge program, and especially our Math Academy and our mentoring programs.
Thank you, Wen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we engage students in emotional intelligence here at the Wilson campus using our grant. As the grant academic manager, I'm primarily responsible for coordinating and planning the execution of the activities and the resources that are offered to students through the grant. And as Wen mentioned, we offer many services to students, but we primarily engage students in EQ in 2 ways. One is through what we call social emotional learning forums or self workshops, which are designed to simply introduce students to emotional intelligence and to connect students with experts to help them navigate their emotions so that they don't interfere with their learning. The second avenue is through a 3-tier peer mentoring program, which I'll talk about a little later. One of the goals of our grant is to offer 4 EQ workshops per year. So we offer 2 in the summer, 1 in the fall, and 1 during the spring term. Being that we just completed year 1 of our grant, we've offered 4 workshops so far, which covers a basic introduction to EQ. We've covered the 6 seconds model, as well as the power of positive talk and self-affirmations. So far, our workshops have been facilitated by MDC faculty, specifically faculty from the social science department, as well as some 6 Seconds partners. Due to COVID, as we all acknowledge, our past sessions have been offered virtually, which sometimes can be a challenge as it relates to engagement. However, we've received some pretty positive feedback from our students and our other participants, and I'll share a little bit about that later. The overall goal of these sessions are to provide students with EQ resources and strategies to help them succeed both academically and socially. So this includes deepening their self-awareness, their self-awareness, increasing their intrinsic motivation, helping them name, understand, and navigating their feelings, and exercising optimism. We also aim to provide students with tools to help them maintain their relationship with faculty, with their colleagues, as well as with their family members. And when earlier she mentioned our Math Academy, which is a major activity for our grant, and the specific goals for students engaging in our mathematic-based activities are to assist those students with improving mathematics anxiety, to encourage a positive and a growth mindset as it relates to math curriculum here at our campus. Our participants include both first and second year students. And last summer, we were fortunate enough to have a partnership with another campus department that provides some tuition support for students starting in the summer. So we focused on that cohort of students last summer, which was actually our first summer in programming with the grant. However, in the fall, we were able to expand our reach through the launch of our 3-tier peer mentoring program, which consisted of faculty members, second-year students who were the peer mentors, and first-year mentees. During this 1-year program, our peer mentors are supported and guided by faculty to maintain academic excellence, while they in turn support our first-year students with their transition from high school to college. And we were able to impact about 54 students last year from all majors during this program last year. And as I said, this was another avenue that we used to introduce more students and faculty to emotional intelligence. And our approach with this included infusing emotional intelligence principles into our peer mentor training, and also encouraging our faculty to participate in our EQ PDs through our Teaching and Learning Center, which is managed by my colleague, Mary Ann. During the length of the program, our faculty and our students were required to meet individually once per month, and they were encouraged to attend our EQ self-workshops. And to encourage students to share their experiences and to practice their EQ with one another during these monthly meetings, we actually gave them this engagement calendar with some EQ prompts to kind of help spark their conversations between the mentors and the mentees. And I received some feedback from our mentors and our mentees that these prompts really helped them have deep conversations beyond academics, which they really enjoyed as a part of this program. So beyond our mentor program and our summer start students, we actually promoted these sessions across campus to all of our students. And we received a lot of support from a group of faculty with spreading the word about EQ. And it was really nice to see we had some of our faculty mentors that really believed in the power of EQ. They will invite their entire class to participate in our sessions, which I really liked. After each of our workshop, we will send a satisfaction survey to our participants with the purpose of helping us enhance our programming. And as I mentioned earlier, we received some pretty positive feedback. Some of the feedback that we've received from students was that they felt more empowered, they were inspired to become more emotionally aware, and that they wish we offered more sessions throughout the term. Because as I mentioned, we only have 4 per year, but we're looking forward to offering more. So it makes me very proud to know that we're offering quality programming to both students and also the faculty who participated, and that they're finding this work impactful and that they're finding it meaningful. Also, after some sessions, we even received some personal emails to thank us. So we received it as grant staff and also some of our facilitators just thanking us to let us know that they've never heard of this concept before and that they're looking forward to diving deeper as the school year continued. So now that we've completed our first year of programming and we're starting our second year, I want to share a little bit about the things that were very important to my journey in coordinating and planning these activities as a program manager. Again, I'm not responsible for facilitating these activities directly, but I thought the first and most important thing was to increase my own knowledge of emotional intelligence and get some professional development. So the first thing that we did was reach out to 6 Seconds. They were actually the first organization to give us some professional training around this concept of emotional intelligence. So after a few months of being in this role, I enrolled in my first EQ training. And since my first workshop, which was last, I think, June or July, I've had the pleasure of participating in a couple of more 6 Seconds training, and I've had the chance to connect with several experts in the field who provided us with so much guidance and feedback that I know that's really impacting my work as a program manager. The other things that I thought were important to my success so far was first, reading the grant, getting a better understanding of what are our goals, what are our objectives. I just wanted to really make sense of our activities and see how they connected to support our desired outcomes here at the campus. Another thing was connecting with faculty, especially those in the social science department, some psychology faculty. They really helped us put this program together. Actually, over the summer, they facilitated our very first workshops. So I think it's important to engage the faculty on your campus. We wanted to get them involved as either an instructor for our math academy. We recruited them to serve as a faculty mentor or a workshop facilitator. And as a grant, if anyone has ever worked in grants, you know that the success of your program relies heavily on other people to facilitate this work. So I just want to say that relationships are key, and I encourage everyone to kind of build those relationships across your campus. But it was also important for me to connect with the network of people outside of my organization, so such as 6 Seconds. All of our 6 Seconds partners have been really helpful beyond belief. Even some participants who I met during my 6 Seconds training, we have a group chat, and they've been able to reach out and offer advice and best practices. And lastly, I would recommend developing a thorough recruitment plan to engage your students, talk to them about the power of EQ, engaging your faculty in your work. So for me, I would participate in campus events such as orientations. I would even go to off-campus college fairs, some college tours with some of our prospective students, open houses. I would complete class visits. So I think that that's really important with building this program across your campus. Looking forward, now that I have a year of programming under my belt, there are some things that I'm very excited about for this upcoming year. First, I'm looking forward to offering in-person sessions. I think that we will be able to have more deep conversations by connecting and engaging in activities together in person. Second, I've sought out a collaboration with our Institute for Civic Engagement and Democracy. And the goal is to infuse emotional intelligence with civic engagement and civic learning so that we can enable students to practice EQ within their communities outside of academics. And we're in the beginning stages of this conversation, but some of the ideas that we've come up so far are really exciting for our students. For this school year, I'm looking to offer some EQ assessments to students and faculty, especially those that are participating in our mentoring program, so that they can use the results as a tool during their relationship building process and throughout the program of our peer mentor program. And lastly, as Dean Tusky mentioned, we want to embed EQ into our first time in college courses. So I'm looking forward to connecting with faculty there. So I know I've shared a mouthful. I hope that paints a picture of our approach, and I hope that is helpful to someone who's looking to engage students in EQ on their college campus. Thank you.
So I'll jump in and talk a little bit about my experience with faculty. My role as the grant manager has been to establish a teaching and learning center through which we're offering our faculty programming and some of our staff programming. So I've been focused on design and implementation of programs as they were written in the grant. The great thing about being part of a grant is that we have the creativity to actually develop and create it, right? So there's these outcomes there, but we're developing and creating the programs. And I'm gonna repeat what you have already heard from all my colleagues, that this process has been a lot of reiteration, going back, changing things a little bit, trying again. I will say that faculty have been engaged since the very beginning. They were, as Wen mentioned, faculty were part of the, they helped write the grant. They're on our advisory committee, and their feedback and recommendations have helped inform all our programs, which is critical. I really enjoyed yesterday's student well-being session. It was a great way to kick off, I think, for me, this whole conference, hearing from students, all the students that were asked how they got into this work or when they became interested in emotional intelligence. They all reference a professor in a particular class. And it's inspiring for us who are 1 year into this program to picture that as part of a goal, that if I'm here next year presenting, I would hope to have a faculty member with me and a student with me, sharing how the work has affected them. So our approach with faculty has been much like the rest of our programming. It's been multi-pronged. We're doing everything from pairing faculty with instructional designers to ensure that online content of courses is inclusive, accessible, and activates deep learning. We've created a program which faculty can apply for funds to participate in conferences, any external training programs that they want to participate in, so they can actually apply for funds and tell us, what they're interested in doing and how they want to use it. We're offering our own professional development workshops, and the program that we're working on fine-tuning right now is our faculty learning communities as well, or communities of practice as others might refer to them. So we know that there's a lot of different levels of EQ development amongst our professors. So our strategy was to offer different levels of engagement to meet faculty where they are and at the level that they're comfortable engaging in. For example, we kicked off our programming last fall 2021, with 2 emotional intelligence workshops. We started with Intro to EQ, and we followed up in the month with Applied EQ for transformational learning. So we started off with this broad overview of emotional intelligence. Hey, everybody who wants to come and learn something about emotional intelligence. It was a broad, reaching a broad audience. And then we narrowed down. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, here's how you could actually apply this in your classroom. This is how you could use it in your work. I want to stop and say, as Tyra, my job has been more planning and bringing people together. I'm not delivering the workshops yet. I said yet. We worked with a 6 Seconds partner, Aljane Wilkinson, who has been an amazing partner and mentor for me throughout this process. He is, when I think about my work so far this past year and what have been some of the hits and what have been some of the misses, working with Aljane was a major hit because he's a professor as well. So he could speak to professors from his own experience in the classroom and was able to relate in that way. Faculty could attend one, they could attend both. It was up to them. We had, the way our professional development workshops work here at the college is there's always an assignment that's attached, and you can receive your professional development hours from that assignment. So what we decided to do was a broad assignment for the Intro to EQ. We wanted something that they can use. We wanted everyone to walk away with some sort of tool that they can use, that can carry out throughout their work. So they didn't just come for the day, listen for an hour, and just walk away. So we did a 3-2-1 assignment, which is a reflection paper on just 3 things you learned, 2 things you want to continue to explore, and 1 thing that you can apply today. And it helped us the first time around. It helped us see, okay, what are people saying they learned? What are people saying they still had questions about? So then when we got ready to offer the same programs again in spring, we took all the feedback that we got from the surveys. We always send a survey after. And then we took the reflection pieces and were able to adjust the workshops in the spring. For the Applied EQ, everyone left with the lesson plan. So their assignment was like to create a lesson plan. And we used the EAR, Engage, Activate, Reflect model. And so everyone who walked away, all the faculty who attended, actually had a lesson plan that they can use. Attendance, I will say that in terms of engagement, attendance hasn't been what I was hoping for right off the bat, but the people who we've had attend have been engaged, responsive. They've given us great feedback. So if I, when I look back at our feedback, one of the complaints that we got was that it was too short, that they wanted more time. And these are the things that we're working out, right? So we're like, if we do it too long, we're going to lose people. It's virtual. But what's sufficient amount of time to really create a meaningful lesson that's helpful and allow for engagement in this virtual world? So, we're taking that feedback, we're adjusting. In the future, we'll consider maybe mini micro lessons that add up to one bigger certification or something. So we're taking that, taking back all the feedback and moving forward with that. I mentioned that we launched faculty learning communities. We started in the fall. We took advantage of a program that we weren't ready. I wasn't ready to create a new program. So we took advantage of a program that already offers a learning academy for professors. And it was a one-year program, and it was designed on, it's focused on gateway course redesign. And gateway courses are one of our major areas that we're focusing on in the grant. And so faculty were engaged in work where they were looking at their syllabus through the lens of anti-racist practices, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And at the end of participating in the learning community, they each actually submitted a revised syllabus showing changes that they made as a result of having participated. It was great, and great work came from it, but we still felt like we were lacking what we're hoping to achieve through the faculty learning communities. We've been away, right? People have been away. We've been disconnected behind these screens. We're hoping that these faculty learning communities will really help reconnect, re-engage, create a culture where where there's a feedback loop, and faculty as colleagues are working together, helping each other. So this one program, we felt like didn't really bring that community together that we were hoping to achieve. So we launched an EQ FLC in the fall. We hired a facilitator. We hired a professional facilitator to facilitate the work for us. We provided training. We brought in 6 Seconds partners again to do the emotional intelligence training. And in the end, all the participants submitted case studies. So our hope is that we'll take these case studies, right, and then be able to share them with other faculty who are interested in trying some of this work. And I have to say, I was so impressed by the broad range of work that came from the FLC. We had one professor just focus on accessibility, and through learning about empathy and wanting to focus on empathy, growth in empathy, he wanted to learn more about what laws are in place, what programs we have in place, how can he be a better ally. So his case study was focused on this one particular theme. We had one faculty member who just wanted to understand from students use of camera. So he's trying to shape his virtual courses moving forward. So he surveyed them on their feelings related to camera use in courses. And he's taking, which is knowledge that then he can share with his colleagues and peers. So we had a variety of different projects that I hope are sparking seeds and work that they'll continue to engage in. We did realize, so again, everything that we've done, we've gone back, really looked at it. What could we have done different? Where do we miss? What worked well? And I've realized that while our faculty have engaged in student learning communities, the faculty who participated in our program so far hadn't done this kind of community work. So the whole idea of learning together, researching together, feedback with each other was new. So we decided to take a step back and we said, okay, so before we start this again in the fall, we need to provide training. What does it mean to be in a faculty learning community so that when you start the FLC, you're already prepared to engage in this kind of work? So a lot of what we've done I see this past year as a pilot, like a lesson that's helping me plan for next year and how we're going to move forward. Our programming has all been based on this like a cyclical model, right? So we want to provide the training to faculty, help them go to conferences, go to workshops, bring the information back, apply it in their classrooms, share it with other faculty. So our plan is this whole feedback loop. It's an EQ feedback loop. We're not on the feedback part yet, because again, it's been a year, but that's where we're going with this. And what I hope to eventually see is then the faculty coming back and teaching other faculty and sharing what they've learned, what's worked for them and what hasn't. And I hope that more of this will start to happen in person. We've actually, I'm really excited that we're getting more requests now to do some of this work in person. So I think next year will be about striking a balance, really trying to find a way that we could be inclusive and include everybody in our programming, but try to come together more. If anybody, I noticed that some of you in the chat said that you were interested in starting some of this work. Feel free to reach out at any point. I think that I can summarize everything by saying it's been a learning process. And one of the critical components has been that we're operating in a space that our leadership is supporting us trying new things. So sure, we're all shooting for hits all the time, but there's going to be some misses, and our leadership is providing an environment where that's allowing us to grow and learn and try new things. So I think Gwen is going to dive now into some of our outcomes and what's come of our work so far.
Yes, I know you've both said that this is our first year. It's actually we're ending the second year of the grant, but it's a full year of programming of producing faculty learning communities, creating that hub or a center for faculty and staff to collaborate and such. And in our first year, the ultimate goal or overall for our project, we wanted to serve at least 425 students and 100 faculty members in the life of our grant. Our grant is a 5-year grant, and we are ending our second year coming up in September. But we have cohorted most of our students by academic year, fall, spring, summer. So our first cohort of students that participated in our summer bridge program, we had 56 students participate in that comprehensive summer bridge program in our first year. 31 of them have completed, and 14 of those students placed at a higher math level, and they didn't even know that they needed this math academy. And providing that EQ workshop and financial literacy kind of engaged them more on our campus and allowed that connectivity early on. To continue that success of connecting students early, that's where Dr. Madison was talking about developing our 3-tier mentoring program, where we paired our first-year students to our second-year students, and those second-year students are mentored by our faculty. In most of our objectives, our grant was designed to improve those math outcomes of direct entry students through the supported math acceleration course in the summer and supported math acceleration course in our fall, supported with peer-led team learning. We call that our PLTL. And then also providing a hub for faculty and staff to learn about emotional intelligence, and feeding back to that loop of collaboration, and also sharing that knowledge in our programming of our teaching and learning centers. And I mean, we are in our second year, or our first year of full programming of fall, spring, and summer right now. So we don't really have preliminary data. Our Title V, like I said before, targets to increase persistence and retention in our student population. We haven't finished our second year yet, so our first cohort of students that participated in our summer bridge, we still haven't gotten that retention data from fall to fall, from fall of last year to this coming fall. So we are chugging away, and I'm so lucky to have Mary Ann and Tyra on the team, and they've been a great access to our programming and to our institution in bringing all the programming that we have written into our grant for EQ and stuff. I think that brings our presentation to an end. If there's any questions that we need to answer in the chat.
While maybe folks are thinking of something to ask, I wanted to share that I think we've been reinforcing the ideas that you're hearing in all the different communication spaces that we have. So for example, every year at the start of the school year, there's a convocation that brings the whole campus together. And we try to touch on these ideas, not necessarily a hammer, this is all about EQ, but for example, our first 19, we talked about design thinking. That's a framework here at the college. And of course, empathy is the basis for design thinking. The second year, we were in the pandemic. So the convocation centered around resilience and self-care. Last year, we looked at mental health because we knew so many students and employees were struggling with mental health, given everything that was going on. And also the idea of human work. Jamie Merisotis, the head of the Lumina Foundation, wrote a book, Human Work in the Age of Smart Machines. And it's how workers' roles are transforming, given automation and AI. And what it means for us is that humans have to work alongside of these machines, but doing the work only humans can do, which is think critically, reason ethically, interact interpersonally, and serve with empathy. So we try to kind of just bring the ideas any way we can and reinforce. Sarah, I think you were going to say something. Right?
Yeah, I was going to jump in. It really helped that we were awarded this Title V grant, right? And I know some of you are probably thinking, well, in a resource constrained environment, it's really difficult to find these resources. But I would challenge all of you, and something that we found is identifying and partnering with key stakeholders internally and externally. So to get a lot of our work off the ground and to expand our work, we've worked with college-wide entities like our Center for Instructional and Organizational Learning. We've partnered with other campuses that are invested in developing their faculty. We've shared facilitators. I know one of the things that we're talking about right now is a peer mentoring program for our veterans students. And given the work that Tyra's done, or Dr. Madison and Wen have done with respect to designing a peer mentoring structure that really works, we're leveraging those best practices. And so this all goes back to that idea of collaboration and creativity is really at the foundation of being able to make this work happen, but also recognizing that, that story of Dr. Gonzalez that you said, it's one hop at a time, right? You just take it one step at a time, and what you'll find is that feedback loop, or you'll start to see those residual benefits happen in so many different areas beyond just what you intentionally thought was going to happen. And so those were our two big things, right? Think creatively about the resources you have, but not just, looking at it from a very myopic view, understand that you've got partners that you can engage with. And then two, recognize that once you start to put one foot in front of the other in this space, you'll start to see the impact in a lot of other areas.
And that impact can help generate momentum and potentially additional funding. Well, one of the comments in the chat was, what a dream team. So Dr. Gonzalez, you scored by getting this incredible group engaged in this work. And what was your secret to get this dream team?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about hiring, you always hire people who are smarter, better, than you, right? They make it all happen. So, but I think it's just talking about why it's beneficial, to teaching, why it's beneficial to leadership, why it's beneficial for student learning. We're not doing it just for kicks. We're doing it because we think it will improve our environment. It will improve the conditions of learning. It will improve our interactions as fellow workmates. So I think that's really important. I think there was a question too about how do you infuse it? I do think you have to take pretty much any opportunity to kind of slip it in there somehow. And there's many ways to talk about this. You can talk about EQ or cultural intelligence or empathy or growth mindset. And I'm not saying they're all the same thing. They have distinctions, but they're in that same family. And so some things are going to speak more, to this crowd, some things to this crowd. And I think, again, having all the burners on, while being open to feedback, always readjusting, not just being headstrong. I think that's the key, and making it clear that you are responding to the feedback. We heard and connect those dots quite literally. Oh, we heard at this session, so now for this session, we're going to try something different. Make it very concrete that we are learning too, and really trying to be responsive.
One of the questions was about assessment, which of course I'm excited to have you talk a little bit about. And so would anyone like to share a little bit about the assessments that you're using?
Sarah, you want to talk about the different?
Yeah, Marianne, you want to share a little bit about assessment, the different EQ assessments, or when? Looks like you want to.
Sure. I'm happy to. Dean Tusky, I saw that you had unmuted yourself, so I didn't know if you wanted to jump in. We haven't started working on assessments with faculty just yet. I think that's something to explore moving forward. We've used the assessments, and I'll let Tyra jump in. I'm not sure if we've done anything with students yet, but on the manager level and on the staff level, we've done from brain brief profiles, brain talent profiles, group development reports, and we did I think Dr. Gonzalez mentioned that we took our managers meetings and turned them into, an emotional, we used the management essentials. We worked with 6-second partners to deliver the workshops. And so we did the pre-assessment and post-assessment, and it was really cool. We just had this up, what was it, last month, really saw the growth and development as a team and at the individual level. There's been leadership reports at the cabinet level. So Dr. Gonzalez's team has all participated in the leadership reports at the academic affairs leadership level. And they were followed up with coaching as well. So you had your report debriefed, and then you stayed with that coach as well for, I think, 3 sessions. So that's what we've done so far. But team, feel free to jump in if I left anything out.
I think what Mary Ann is trying to say is that it is tough to assess any progress, especially when faculty participate in our faculty learning communities, in our EQ learning community, because we're in our early stages. The only feedback that we have or assessment that we got is their feedback of how impactful or how they would be using it in their course. We're looking to kind of design more of like assessments of, we would have to work with our evaluator and to see like what avenues of assessment we can assess success, especially the impact that they have in our student population. Right now, we don't have those parameters set up, but that is a work in progress right now, so that we can kind of report that big impact with student success and persistence and retention.
And we talked about using one of the either low cost or free versions of the 6 seconds assessment with students, if as part of that, so that students, faculty, staff, leadership are all kind of using the same language. And this year, as part of this pilot, we tried a lot of different assessments, and 6 seconds has a lot of different reports, from 1-page summaries to really in-depth, but they're all the same questionnaire. So we got a ton of data, which we can then, make these different group reports about different teams and start kind of building a shared insight and shared vocabulary.
Yes.
Liza made a comment, and Liza Johnson, Dr. Johnson, I invited you to speak in case you want to say it out loud, because I thought that was a great comment. Are you able to talk, Liza? Okay. Any other questions people want to ask, please pop in the chat. You may have asked them earlier and I missed them. Okay, Mike's not working from Liza, but her comment was that the passion that this team shows and dedication to students really comes across. And I think a lot of times we lose our focus on students and why we're really here. And you all have managed to kind of keep bringing that back and back and back into the conversation today and all year. And that student-centeredness came across clearly today, and I think is probably the most important success factor in this project. So
I would love to add to that. I think our student dean, Dean Asensio, is here as a guest today. And he always says he doesn't want to talk about numbers, that he talks about dreams. So every student has a dream, and that sticks with me. And I think about it, and anything we do, goes back to lives, right, that we're impacting.
Yeah. And as an institution, your work is so at a place of transformation in students' lives. And I think some institutions forget that. I see somebody raised your hand. I'm happy to call on you, but maybe you could just type your question in the chat. It would be easier. One question that came up was, what were some of the barriers? And I know that this kind of work is a significant culture change. Dr. Gonzalez, you mentioned there was a process of trying to get people on board. I know Dean Teskey, there's, not everybody's like, I want to teach my academic subject. So for people who are facing resistance, any advice?
I think part of the advice is, even though it might get your goat, oh, come on, why don't you get on board? This is great, to remember to have compassion for that person. That person doesn't see it the way you see it. And so listening, what is it that is not striking you as important or relevant, so that we can engage in this conversation, because I think I can show you how it's relevant and important. I think, again, going back to something I said earlier, I think we're so used to products at the end of a meeting, at the end of a semester, a week, there's this thing I hand in, and it's usually a chart or a budget or a spreadsheet. And so making room for things that are incredibly important don't always end up in a report, don't end up in a spreadsheet. And it's about the relationship you develop with the people that you're with, whether they're students or faculty or staff.
The other thing, sorry,
Please.
I would add to that is that, in addition to meeting people where they are and listening, and as somebody who wants to lead this work, it will help you become a better leader. So for me, I can tell you, it gave me better insight into the people that report to me. It helped me better understand what motivates them, what they care most about. I mean, at the end of the day, I know somebody mentioned this at Miami-Dade College. I think one of the most beautiful things about working at this institution is everyone has everyone focuses on students. Like that is a passion for why people are here. We have, outstanding people that could be doing a million things. But beyond that, right, understanding how to motivate individuals and engage people in your vision and the direction of our campus it really helped me, I would say that, better understand that and better understand our faculty and our students through the work that when Marianne and Dr. Madison are doing. So that is one thing that I will say that, sometimes it's not easy, especially because we have those things, right? We have those metrics that we have to meet. They're like, we have these goals. This is what we have to do. But be patient with yourself too. If you're leading this work, managing this work, or even developing this work.
I'd say one last thing. I think people, when you're scared, you tend to go away, right? You run away from it. And I think this is the kind of thing where if you're afraid, go forward, engage, have that conversation. What's the worst that can happen, right? It'll be the end of a conversation or we start a new one. So I think that idea that there's really not too much to be afraid of. Over the course of this, I've seen folks who were more guarded in their leadership be more vulnerable in their leadership. And before my eyes, I am not exaggerating, you can see the relationship change between the manager and the employee because the leader took a different tack of saying, oh, wow, this hurts me too. And I'm confused about it too, instead of, you become human and we have a real conversation instead of this, pretend stuff where nobody's happy, nobody feels satisfied, nobody's expectations are being met. So kind of like run into the fear a little bit, the kind of that mentality.
Yeah, and that sounds like a shift towards transformational leadership, really a human-centered approach to leadership to match that human-centered approach to learning. One question came up about mindfulness. And have you integrated any mindfulness practices in the project thus far?
I wouldn't say that we took it as a specific concept and put it specifically in training. However, over the last 3 years, we have had mindfulness speakers, all of this, taking the managers meeting, throwing it out as an informational, this is happening next week, make sure you turn in. We threw all that out and it was always a development session. So within those development sessions, we have had mindfulness speakers. I wrote in the chat that I thought it was interesting because the college-wide, they've launched an app called Unmind, and it's a mindfulness app, and it helps you do different things. And the woman who's the head of our health and wellness mentioned to us that overwhelmingly the participants are Wolfson people. They just launched it, and I don't have the data. We haven't interviewed these people of why they chose it, but I have a hunch that now folks who've been listening to these ideas for a while are more predisposed to give something like that a shot. Before they might have said, oh, that's wacky, crazy, what is that, And I think now they're like, okay, I've had conversations like this. I think I understand what you mean about being mindful, being self-reflective, thinking of other people's position. So I just thought that was really interesting when I heard that we're kind of overrepresented in the mindfulness app with Wolfson people.
Well, thank you all for this fantastic presentation today and for your incredible work this year plus of building this pilot and experimenting, and super excited to see what happens next. I was hoping to be with you all in person this summer, but one of my colleagues is going to be there in a couple of weeks, and really looking forward to hearing how this unfolds and proceeds. So appreciate you all so much for this work you're doing and for sharing it today. For those of you who are here at the conference on Zoom, our next session will start in about 15 minutes. And I'm looking forward to a conversation about educational leadership and the project we're doing with the EDD program and integrating social emotional learning into educational leadership. And then we have lots of other sessions and workshops today. And then those of you who are watching on YouTube, we'll have our next panel tomorrow morning, which I think you'll love. Thank you everyone for being here today. I'm going to stop our live streaming and recording, and then we'll close out in a minute so people can finish with the chat.